Hey everyone, this is Eddie Kalegi with Tim Moore reminding you that SportsSpeak is now powered by SeatGeek. SeatGeek is the one-stop shop for tickets to sporting events, concerts, and so much more.
Use the promo code SportsSpeak at checkout for $20 off your first purchase.
SeatGeek, let there be live. Now, on to the show. Hey guys, what's going on? We're back from our little summer break. Welcome back to SportsSpeak Live, episode 184. I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Well, for some, it might be annoying. It's the end of August, school's starting up again, but that just means football season is right around the corner. So we are back. We are ready to go. We are 1 week away from the SportsSpeak Fantasy Football Gimmick Draft for the third year in a row. More on that later. But we got a lot to talk about. The Olympics have concluded. Monumental run from Steph Curry in the Olympics. We're going to touch on that. Yankees and Mets, some drama with both those teams as they're both in heated playoff races right now. And then the New York Giants. We're going to get into them as well. The 2024 schedule predictions from Tim and I, actually not very different from one another. So we're going to get into that as well. We have Raheel Jazzball with us to help us break it all down as well. So let's get into it. SportsSpeak Live, episode 184. And let's start with the Paris Olympics, which besides the river poisoning some athletes, I think that was a pretty successful Olympics, all things considered. Opening ceremony was weird. The closing ceremony was pretty good. But we got to talk about this U.S. basketball team. It is becoming abundantly clear that other countries are catching up to the United States on the men's and women's sides in basketball. France could have very easily taken gold in both of those games. But the women's team comes through led by A'ja Wilson. But the men's team we have to talk about because LeBron, KD, and Steph, all likely in their final Olympics, they all stepped up. None more than Steph Curry, who dropped 36 in the semifinal. And then in the gold medal match, 4 threes, including a crazy fading three-pointer over 2 defenders to seal the victory for Team USA. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, Tim. Steph Curry, I don't know how high he goes in terms of the all-time rankings of NBA greats. I hate comparing eras, but you cannot deny that he is a transcendental talent in the sport of basketball. He changed the way it's played, for better or for worse, we don't really know, but he's done it efficiently. He's the greatest shooter the NBA has ever seen. He is a borderline top 10 player, in my opinion, who is still kicking at 35 years old. He's one of the fastest players I've ever seen as well. And in a tournament where LeBron and KD were great, other pieces like Anthony Edwards, Joel Embiid found a way. Stephen Curry is the reason Team USA wins gold yet again.
Well, and another thing to consider as well, Eddie, in a series where it's also a lot more physical than what we see in the NBA, Steph Curry was the most clutch part of that Team US. And the way I look at it like this is, and Eddie, this is where I'll agree with you. And I think I shouldn't say think, I know I've said it in the past, but you want to talk about basketball players that have an impact on the sport. I consider, of course, LeBron, MJ, Kobe to be up there in terms of the top guys you recognize. But what Steph Curry has done the last few years, recognizing his brand, especially on the side of women's sports as well, in the WNBA and so on, and trying to be more involved, for him to be someone that represents the United States and being someone in that big moment, to be honest with you, I don't think you could have picked a better person. And I do genuinely think this. You know, Steph Curry, when you look back at his career, whether you like his Golden State run or you hate it, you can't deny. I genuinely think this, and I know everybody says, oh, there will never be somebody like Steph Curry. Listen, I don't. We can only go so far in development before we get AI and robots taking over control in the NBA that can make those shots. There is nobody that is as lights out as Curry. Not even Caitlin Clark on the WNBA side is as dominant as what Steph Curry is. I mean, he is just absolutely to something, a freak of nature that even with this size and so on, you'll just never be able to replicate in the history of the sport again. Doesn't mean there won't be good shooters, but Steph Curry, you have to consider being a top 5 player of all time without a doubt. And what he does on the side shows just how much he means to the sport of basketball. But absolutely hyped for Team US. But I do want to say one thing as well. While the United States is very clearly getting caught up on to Eddie, right? I feel like a lot of the problem is leadership. Sorry. Steve Kerr not even taking interviews at halftime, putting it off to assistants and so on. It makes no sense. Be transparent, show urgency. The problem is again, they're not getting incentivized for going to the Olympics, just like the All Star game. And I'm not saying they're treating it like some recreational thing. They are treating a lot more than an All Star game, but it's the point of they come off a long season. Now they got to get ready. I mean, there's still a few months, or I shouldn't say a few months, but a few weeks to go before they really start getting primed back up for the start of the NBA season. And it's like, these guys just, it's like there's no urgency, there's no leadership. And Steph Curry was that leader that stepped up ultimately. But if this U.S. group wants to be better moving forward and wants to be the dominant powerhouse it's praised to be, there has to be leadership and it has to start from the coaching staff. Because to me, it felt like they constantly played from behind, constantly felt slow, and they needed to wait for their talent to prevail, which shouldn't be happening when you're the best players on God's green earth in the best league of them all, as they said.
Yeah, a couple things on that. I agree with you. I mean, I'm not going to deny that Steve Kerr has some coaching ability, but you also can't deny Steve Kerr has been made by Michael Jordan as a player and Steph Curry as a coach. That's just the name of the game here. And obviously, Team USA needs to find new leadership because Coach K and Greg Popovich are very, very old. Eric Spoelstra is on that staff. To me, Eric Spoelstra is the best coach in the NBA. I'd personally give him a leg up. And I mean, look towards the college ranks too, besides Mark Few being on the staff. I mean, there's a lot of good ones. How about the one that got rumored to be the Lakers coach a month ago? Dan Hurley. I think Dan Hurley would be able to inspire these players a little bit more and at least manage a better rotation because Steve Kerr's rotations in this were odd to say the least. So I think that might be necessary. I'm going to push back a little. I love Steph Curry. I think top 5 all time is a little much. I saw Raheel making a face as well. Raheel, your thoughts on Steph Curry in these Olympics in general?
Well, I mean, it was fun to finally root for Steph Curry. I'll be the first to say when throughout the whole Warriors dynasty, I was probably up there for one of the biggest haters. So seeing him drain those threes constantly in the finals was just so aggravating to see. But it was fun to finally be able to root for these guys. Fun to be able to root for KD. Fun to be able to root for LeBron and all the guys. And yes, the world is catching up. But I said the exact same thing when I was actually on this show right before the Tokyo Games. Just the nature of it, right? The NBA has gone much more global. You look at the amount of players that are in the NBA that are like, let's go through the 5 or 10 best players in the NBA. A lot of them are not from the United States. Nikola Jokic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. They're not from the United States. The game has grown more globally, which is a lot of fun to see. And while it makes for tougher competition for the gold medal, I mean, you still get great games. I mean, that USA France game was probably one of the best basketball games we might see in the next few years. I certainly don't think an NBA game is going to top that. So it's a lot of fun to see. So yes, the world is catching up, but that's kind of the nature of the beast, right? I mean, the world is kind of catching up in everything. I mean, because sports are growing globally and the NBA has grown much more globally from when the Dream Team and Michael Jordan were there and they barely faced any NBA players on their route to the gold medal. So it is what it is. As far as Steph Curry being top 5 of all time, no, I'm not willing to have that discussion. I'll put him at 11. You can have me if you want to put him in the top 10 all time, but I'm not going top 5. I'm sorry. I'm not, I understand he changed the game and he revolutionized it, but you can make that argument for a lot of players. I mean, Wilt Chamberlain added as many NBA rules as there are now because he was so dominant. So I'm not going top 5, top 10. You can have me. I have him at like 11 or 12 right now. I think he would, if he does, I mean, as of late, I've been a big Steph Curry fan. I still think he's a top 5 player in the NBA right now, even with all the young guns in there. But top 5 all time is a little much. I don't have him on that Mount Rushmore of basketball, but I have no issue with if you want to say he's top 10 all time, but top 5 is a little much for me.
Yeah, I agree with you on that point. I mean, to me, Steph Curry might be the best American-born player still right now in the NBA when you think about it. Anthony Edwards is climbing up there. Jason Tatum, we all have our thoughts on Jason Tatum. But, besides Luka, Jokic, Embiid, Giannis, and Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, in terms of performance in the NBA last year, Steph Curry is right up there with them. And when you look at the rest of Team USA and the players that were left off the roster, Steph Curry did better than those guys and still is killing it at 35 years old. So great for him, great for Team USA. Very successful Olympics overall. I'm personally hyped to see what they can do in 2028 in Los Angeles. Also big for Paris and LA that they used a lot of existing venues, because one of the big issues with the Olympics is building stadiums and then they just rot and they become white elephants and they just don't get used. It's part of a reason why Greece ended up finding themselves in economic disarray after it. Brazil similarly as well. So it's good that countries like France and the United States have existing venues that they can use for the Olympics, and that's going to make the process a lot smoother. But good Olympics, had a lot of fun. Gold Zone, they did too, was great. I really had fun.
Awesome.
Yeah. Scott Hansen is the best. You saw when he like punched the table too.
Yep.
When he got excited and he was bleeding.
I mean, this was a really good. I mean, there was a lot of critiques about the Tokyo Olympics just in general, and I know it was different because the time zone was a lot worse for us, and it was COVID. But I mean, these were a real. I mean, these Paris games were a lot of fun to watch.
They were,
just in general.
Let's get to something that's probably not going to be as fun to watch this year. That's New York Giants football in the 2024 season with a quarterback that is the most overpaid quarterback in the league in Daniel Jones. So for our YouTube viewers at home, we're going to flash our graphic. Me and Tim gave our schedule predictions week by week for the season. If you're listening on Spotify, you can't look at your phone, your computer right now. You can go to Twitter. You can go to Insta, SportsSpeak Live. We have the graphic there as well. Me and Tim feel about the same way. Of course, Tim's a little more optimistic than I am. Tim's got them going 9-8, probably fringe for that 7 seed in the NFC. I've got them definitely missing the playoffs, but not having a terrible year at 8-9. They have a very manageable schedule, especially early in the season. And Tim's actually got them starting 4-1. Our big discrepancies, let's just go through them because we feel the same way first 3 weeks. Minnesota without JJ McCarthy is a win. First game against the Commanders is a win, even if that game's on the road at that terrible stadium. And they're going to lose to Cleveland because the Browns are going to find a way, even with Nick Chubb and the quarterback fiasco and all that. Week 4 against Dallas. Now, mind you, last year the Cowboys came to MetLife and beat the Giants, I think, by 40.
40-0.
Yeah, and I don't see anything changing from that, despite the drama with CeeDee Lamb and Micah Parsons' futures with the team. But Tim, you have the Giants for some reason winning this game week 4. Can you tell me why?
Well, listen, sometimes miracles happen. The Giants beat the Eagles last year, and I think it makes a good statement after a win after Washington to start off division play. And for the record, I'm pretty sure if you look throughout the remainder of my schedule, that's the final win I give the Giants in the entire division because I have them losing to the Commanders down the road, losing to the Cowboys, and losing to the Eagles twice. So I think when it's all said and done, how I view the Giants moving forward is they're good enough to be 500 based on the schedule that presents itself, but they're going to be just out of that reach of the playoffs on the NFC side, just because of the fact that they didn't do as good in division play, which has been the big thing. Since Brian Daboll's come in, there's been a heavy emphasis on getting better in division play. For the record, I think it's fair to say the Cowboys look a lot worse than where they were last year. And that doesn't mean they're not going to be good. I think they're going to be above 500 team. I think the Eagles are the most underrated team in the NFL. And you know how much I hate Philadelphia, but it's true. What they did this offseason, for me, makes them, I don't want to say a legitimate Super Bowl favorite, but Super Bowl contenders and NFC contenders, where you would have to say they're the outright favorite to win in the NFC East. So I think the Giants, if they can just prove to stay on some team's level, I think they can compete with Dallas and sneak one off, rather if it's home or away, but I don't think they're going to win both.
We'll go through some more of our discrepancies in a second. Want to let Raheel jump in here. So Tim's got them 9-8. I've got them 8-9. We both see them as about a middle of the road NFL team this year. Daniel Jones he looked good in terms of like training camp and that joint practice, and he looked fired up with the facial hair, starting fights. And then he looks absolutely pathetic in that preseason game against the Texans. You got Malik Nabers, who I think is going to be a stud, but you need someone to consistently get on the ball. You don't have Saquon anymore. Offensive line's got some problems. Defense is only going to take you so far. What's your expectations from the G-Men this year?
You guys actually have, I've gone lower than both you guys. I see them going 7-10. So again, really? same area, but I have them finishing at 7-10. I mean, it'll be a middle of the pack year. If I'm being honest, I think if they finish 7-10, 8-9, 9-8, I think I'd easily take that because, I mean, there's a very good season. There's a very good chance this season goes completely horrible, and I can see them finishing like 4-13.
Well,
So
and
there's
I was
really
you, Raheel, is other than the quarterback position, which we can both agree on, where do you see being the weak point of this team down that road to get them to 7-10? Because to be honest with you, run defense wise, what I've seen, granted it's the preseason, you could tell with Shane Bowen there is a little bit of improvement, but I am worried about the secondary miserably. I think that we have probably one of the worst corner depth units in the league. I mean, safety wise, I think Newman's going to be a good add on. But my goodness, I'm worried for our corners. Outside of Deonte Banks, I don't know who I can trust.
yeah, the safety is definitely an issue. I'm gonna say, I mean, I always have concerns with the offensive line. I don't care how many additions they have. We've been hearing the offensive line is going to get better since 2012. And basically, since they won the Super Bowl in 2012, the offensive line has been near the bottom in every single stat category. I mean, you look at last year, I mean, yeah, Daniel Jones did not play well before he got the AC, before he tore his ACL, but he was getting no help. He was getting, I mean, remember there was that Monday night game in Seattle. Remember, I was on with you guys right before that game, and I talked about how important it was. He got sacked like 12 times. So the offensive line is always an issue, but the secondary is also very good. Very good point, Tim. I think that will be a concern. So it's all going to be on that front four, front five. They have to be able to get pressure without blitzing, which I think they're capable of. So I think they can win a couple games on the back of their defense, but it's just the offense right now. I mean, and I know Daniel Jones looked horrible. I will give him a break. Like people are flaming him on social media, but come on. It's his first game after an ACL tear. I know it's the preseason, but like the dude on a non-contact injury just tore up his ACL, and that was his first game back. So let's give him a little bit of slack. I'm not a huge fan of him. I'm kind of indifferent on him, but let's give him some slack here. Okay, first game off an ACL tear, like especially for a mobile quarterback.
I feel that way, but at the same time, that play that everybody's freaking out about, to me, has nothing to do with rehabbing from an ACL tear.
Okay,
That's
yeah,
just
okay,
a bad
that's just a
decision.
poor decision. That was a
Yes.
Carson Wentz-esque throw there, but I don't know. I assume it was probably just from getting. I mean, maybe you get plugged back in there. The game was probably a little quick for him right now, even though it is a preseason game. And I think that's why important. I think that's why it was important to get him some snaps in the preseason. Just kind of get back in the flow of get back in because you can look good at all in practice and training camp. When you get put in there in a real game, it's a completely different story. The speed of the game, you have so maybe everything was a little quick for him. And that was a horrible decision. I'm not giving him any excuses on that play, but I think it's important. I think it was important to give him some reps in the preseason to get some of those cobwebs out of the game. And again, like you guys talked about it's not as if week one they're throwing him straight to the wolves with the Cowboys pass rush. You've got a couple games to grow into it. Minnesota and Washington, now that JJ McCarthy's out, should both be wins. So we're gonna see.
Yeah, we
And,
shall see. Go ahead, Tim.
and I want to say this too, because when we look at the joint practices and everything else, what we saw with Detroit, we saw a little bit of success with Daniel Jones. And now we're seeing as well with the Jets this week. I understand what people want to say when they see one game. But the other thing too, that I'm not trying to be a Daniel Jones defender. Granted, if it was against some second strings and some starters, Daniel Jones ended that little tough streak he had and started this game strong. He produced a touchdown drive, which sure wasn't throwing for a touchdown, but allowed Devin Singletary to score and eventually led to a field goal later in that first half. By the way, pretty sure that's like the only points the Giants scored in that game, as much as people are high about Tommy DeVito. And granted, again, I would love to see what Allen Robinson's going to bring for this offense and so on down the road. I think he's in much better shape than a guy like Cole Beasley was, who didn't even play a snap for the Giants last year. So I think that the receiving depth is going to be very interesting to see moving forward. I still feel the Giants need somebody outside of Malik Neighbors, but Darius Slayton on a contract year has a lot to prove. I think that Daniel Jones, the point is that, yes, there was a lot of ugly. He made a very, very horrible mistake. A six-year quarterback shouldn't make it the start of the game. But let's not act like either the Texans wasn't a playoff team last year, had one of the league's better defenses last season, and let's not act like too Daniel Jones hasn't been testing himself this preseason because again, we only get to see preseason games unless you're there at camp. You don't get to see the joint practices and so on. Detroit has a very solid defensive line, and we saw offensive line improvements, which again it's the preseason, but we saw the line stay there, stay strong against Detroit. And guess what? You're playing what I would still argue is a top 5 defense in the NFL this weekend, rather if Daniel Jones gets a preseason game or not against the Jets. I mean, we know how good this Jets defense can be. And the point is that if Daniel Jones looks great in joint practices, I would like to personally see him play this weekend. But at the end of the day, even if it's against backups, the point is that he's getting the opportunities this preseason, I would say, compared to past preseasons against good defenses to test himself. And I have faith in this, even if Daniel Jones is not good. And the reason why I look at 9-8, Eddie, as the record, and why I believe this team could be above 500, if you're telling me last season, at the worst of Giants teams, we saw this team realistically 3 games, or I should say 3 plays away from having a chance to make the playoffs if they convert. Brian Daboll can manage Daniel Jones enough like he did 2 years ago to just find ways to put scores together and let this defense carry itself to victory. Because historically, the way things have showed, good defenses more often than not win championships unless your name's Patrick Mahomes. The elite quarterback is hard to find, but elite defenses historically in the playoffs have a lot better success rates than good offenses, which is why I just genuinely believe, listen, I don't think Daniel Jones is quarterback of the future, but I don't think Daniel Jones is so awful that he's going to have a negative touchdown to interception ratio, and he's much better than any other quarterback we could throw out there, even Drew Lock, in my opinion. So
I hear you, but here's my thing, right? Like, it's not just about Daniel Jones. Like, Tim, I know you're very high on Saquon Barkley. He's gone. And you have to admit that in 2022, as good as the defense was, Saquon Barkley is the reason that the Giants made the postseason. So I don't know how well Devin Singletary is going to fill that void.
Argue that. The reason why the Giants made the postseason 2 years ago is because they got off to a very hot start and they played strong defensively and got stopped when it mattered. Yes, Saquon Barkley was a part of that offense, and I'm not saying that he wasn't. But when you look at this team, listen, I understand you lose Saquon, but you also lose a high injury risk. And I know the Giants end up already having a running back issue in terms of injuries, where now you're going to be looking around for who's going to be that backup. But I genuinely do think somebody like Devin Singletary could also block and get some productive runs. That Singletary has the capability, if he's given the right amount of touches, to run for 1,000 yards. He's not going to be explosive, but he can catch your screenplays and he can catch the ball. It is something Daniel Jones needs. And the other thing as well is tight end. You know, we're talking about Theo Johnson. Listen, I'm a big Daniel Bellinger supporter. I love him to death. You could put him at fullback. You could put him in a lot of opportunities as well, where he as well can be someone that you can trust to be reliable. And the big thing is when Brian Daboll came in for the Giants, the big thing is what? You want to be dependable, right? To be dependable, you got to be on the field. Saquon Barkley was not dependable in the big picture because he was constantly hurt. Daniel Jones, big picture because he keeps getting hurt, is not exactly dependable, but he's the best you got. So you have to depend on him. So I think for the Giants moving forward, listen, Malik Neighbors is a huge ad. If they can work downfield, I think Jalen Hyatt, the person I'm excited to see if they can excel is Wan'Dale Robinson. Because if Wan'Dale can play the slot and do all these things and succeed, I think the Giants offense can do a lot of stuff. But I want to see downfield action like everybody's preaching. And I think Brian Daboll is very, very capable of providing that. But you need the right quarterback to also make that happen, which is why I don't think Daniel Jones is the answer. But you're going to see that first process of this team doing it, no matter who's under center, because we saw growth with it last year with Tyrod Taylor before he left.
All right, well, we'll leave it there on the Giants. Reminder, we got a lot more football coverage coming up before the NFL season starts. Our next episode, probably in a few days, we're going to look at the Eagles schedule, dive into them a little more. I'm starting to feel like Tim might be a little higher than on the Eagles than I am, so we'll see how that goes. We'll also preview college football. We got our fantasy draft August 28th. Got a lot planned for that. More details to come on our next episode. Plus, we'll do our regular old NFL preview before the season starts with the Chiefs and Ravens 2 weeks from Thursday. But I've got to go to baseball to finish this episode because the Mets and Yankees are both in tight races, and bizarre things have been happening with both these teams. I got to start with the Mets for a second. Now, it's just frustrating, first of all, from a situational standpoint, because the the Padres and D-backs, they've gotten away. So the Mets are just chasing the Braves at this point. And just like 2022, the Mets have to deal with a race with the Braves. And it always feels like with Atlanta, for some reason, when one of their players goes down, they somehow get better. They won a World Series when their best player and their best pitcher got hurt. Right now, their three best offensive players and their best pitcher are all on the shelf, yet they're still winning games. The Mets have had some iffy moments down the stretch, but ever since Grimace, they've been a very competitive team these last 2 months. Yeah, they didn't look good against Oakland or Seattle, but overall they're finding ways to win. Francisco Alvarez with the big walk-off 2 nights ago. As we record this, they currently have the lead against the Baltimore Orioles. But the Mets still have this problem, and I've seen this with the Nets too, and it's frustrating. These are two of the teams that I root for that just do such stupid things and have self-inflicted PR disasters that they cause. So today's a day game. Today's one of those camp days. The last time the Mets had a camp day last week, for some reason with a bunch of kids there, the Mets had the Hawk Tuah girl throw out the first pitch. And, fittingly, the Mets ended up blowing that game. They had a 5-run lead, and they lost to the Oakland A's. Like, why are you having her throw out the first pitch, number one? It's been 2 months since that video was even popular. And why are you doing it on camp day with a bunch of kids there? What are we doing here? It makes no sense. It makes no sense.
Eddie,
these are the things this team always does.
Because of social, I'm going to sound so old here, and I'm only 20 years old, but it's a lot different now. All those kids, they might be 9 or 10 years old, but trust me, they know who they are. Just know who she is just because of how social media is nowadays.
Okay, but still, it's stupid. Why is she throwing out a first pitch?
Apparently
from here.
It was from some charity animal. I don't understand. I really don't get it. And for the record, all the people complaining on Twitter, though, that you have to explain to your kids who this person is, rather if they're 3, 4, 5 years old, listen. And I think it was Sean Marash from WFAN. I could be wrong. I don't remember who said it. But listen, if you can lie to your kids about the Tooth Fairy, Santa Claus, and so on, and you can't lie to your kids about what the Hawk Tuah girl is, I mean, come on now. Come on. Sometimes you gotta lie. It's ridiculous to me. But the fact that the Mets, I don't know, Grimace is all great and grand. I don't know what tone this sets. It's not some A-list celebrity. It's some pop-in video. Why are we not throwing out the first pitch for Motorsports Today? We had a pop-in video go out there.
I'm down.
Got no video.
Yeah.
Who cares?
Yes, have us. I'll wear a Hawk Tuah shirt and throw out a first pitch. I'll gladly do that. But it's just one after another of this team compared to any other team, and I feel the same way with the Nets in the NBA, that just do stupid things that lead to people criticizing them. Yeah, the Mets have some phantom injuries, but other teams do too. We'll talk about the Yankees having one very specifically in a second, but the Mets just do stupid things and don't think things through sometimes, and it's a big reason why they get criticized a lot. The Jorge Lopez situation became a whole lot worse than it ever should have been. And of course, now he's cooking for the Cubs. I'm not saying that they made a bad decision in the moment, but at the very least, you need to let the guy explain for himself what happened, and that he did not say that they were the worst team in baseball, and they still got rid of him before that. And it's just the Mets jumping to conclusions and doing stupid things. Let's not forget, too, 5 years ago when Jason Vargas tried to fight a reporter in a press conference after the game. It's just things like this that just always happen with the Mets, and it does not happen with any other teams. And that's why it just aggravates me. This situation isn't that big of a deal in the moment, and I know what Rahil's saying. I know everybody knows what Hawk Tuah is, but still, just the idea of having her throw out the first pitch on camp day is stupid. Anyway, I'm done with the Mets. They're still in the playoff race. I still think they're going to narrowly miss out on making the postseason because I think the Braves, Padres, and D-backs are going to get the 3 wild card spots. But I'm just glad that they've been on the field better than I expected because they were an embarrassment to start the season. Grimace saved the day, and at least they're playing well. And David Stearns' signings, JD Martinez, Sevi, Sean Mania, have all been really good. So overall, I'm happy with the team this year. Could have been a lot worse for a team that Steve Cohen said the goal was not even to compete this year. They are competing, but just stupid stuff like this. But speaking of stupid stuff, let's finish with something else. So the Yankees, I've noticed, every year right around the trade deadline, something weird happens. Last year's was Anthony Rizzo being concussed for 2 months and they don't say anything, and then they finally have the concussion thing, and he had been playing bad. Now, Alex Verdugo has not been hitting the ball all that well these last couple of months, and this report comes out this week that he's apparently allergic to batting gloves. Now, there's so many memes that could be associated with that, Tim, but just how have you gone through your entire major league career? You've been a major league player for 7 years now. How has that revelation never been made until now?
It's called he's allergic to being a good Yankee because Rio and I talked about it yesterday. Quite frankly, nobody wants to take the reins and be a good Yankee unless your name is Aaron Judge or I would say Giancarlo Stanton is good, or Juan Soto. But other than that, it's miserable. And I'm going to say it like this, not to divert off track, but it's stories like that, Eddie, where it goes back to the point of when is somebody going to be accountable for the New York Yankees? I understand Aaron Judge is the captain, but he can only do so much and say so much. He's not the one that makes the decisions of what is putting this team together. The fact that, listen, Verdugo started off great. I always viewed him as being a potential trade piece to get an upgrade and so on. But at the end of the day, now he's slumping, and the Yankees consider him the leadoff spot, consider him in the 5 spot. The fact that Jason Dominguez is not playing Major League Baseball right now and not starting every day is frustrating because you need somebody to take the reins and be a leadoff hitter. And it's stuff like this where, again, it's just, oh, how do you go this long? Only the Yankees can do that because how can we go so long expecting the same thing over and over and over and over again with this lineup and expecting the same result to change? That's my problem with the New York Yankees, which is why nothing with Alex Verdugo surprises me at all. So let's put it like this. It's not surprising at all. And I'm sure, Raheel, you have words for it as well. But I mean, what I'm seeing for the Yankees, and I know I'm complaining about a team that's battling for a division championship, is battling for the best record in baseball, but how they have performed overall, the bullpen being a disaster, the lineup having no clear answers outside of 2 people, the fact that they're battling for the best record in baseball is astonishing to me because when they're bad, they're bad. And when they're great, they're great, but you can't pick which Yankees team you're going to see because they play down to opponents. They can't get lefties out. And then they also, I've never seen a Yankees team more than ever this year show so much problems and attitude. Rather, if it was Marcus Stroman showing up Torres on the mound, Gleyber Torres not hustling. Yeah, you had the Aaron Hicks thing, what is it, last year, 2 years ago to this point. I mean, it's over and over and over again where we're starting to see emotions come to this team because they know they're not good enough to win. They just know they're good enough to be above 500. And they have loser mentality on the baseball field constantly, which does not help at any point if you want to win a World Series.
Raheel, before we go, your thoughts on the Yankees?
I mean, right now they're a little skewed after that loss last night. I mean, that was a brutal loss last night. I mean, it was frustrating from the get-go. And one thing I've noticed is there's just it's not even about the grand issues. Like, yes, the bullpen. I'm not going to blame the bullpen for last night because that was fully on the offense. But yes, the bullpen's been struggling. Yes, we don't really have many guys who can get strikeouts, which is why the Yankees are not good in extra innings because with a runner on second, you need guys who can get strikeouts. The Yankees don't have that out of the bullpen. Yes, Clay Holmes is a question mark. Yes, Alex Verdugo is like 2 for his last 27. Apparently now that's coming out that he's allergic to his batting glove. I don't know. I've been campaigning for Jason Dominguez pretty much ever since he got to AAA. Bring him up. There's no point in keeping your best. If you're not going to trade your best prospect, you might as well use him. There's no point keeping him down there in AAA. And last year when he came up, he gave the Yankees a spark, even though they were out of the playoffs. Just please, there needs to be some kind of refresh here. Like it's right now it's the same old song and dance. Try and change things up. Put Verdugo in there. I mean, but and then DJ LeMahieu, man. I mean, I love DJ. I think throughout his career, he's been a very good Yankee. He was great when we first got him, 2019. I mean, that home run in Game 6 of the ALCS that tied the game that obviously got overshadowed because of Jose Altuve's walk off. I'll love that guy. I love him for a while, but like it's gotten bad. Like he might be the worst hitter in baseball right now. Like it's really brutal watching him swing the
You,
bat.
I see you were hard on me about Jose Abreu. I would take Jose Abreu over DJ any day of the week. When you
Yeah,
look at the numbers, it's awful. It's like you could probably put a little leaguer out there that in the Little League World Series, and they could probably hit the ball further and more productively than what DJ LeMahieu is doing right now. I mean, he literally it's tap out to the pitcher, pop out to second base. There is no positivity to his swing at all. He's lost. And to be honest with you, Rio, he's been
he knows
lost the
it.
last years. That's
Yeah,
since
last year
then.
he's not. I mean, and you can see in his body language, he knows it too. And I mean, this was going back to my original point because I got off track a little bit, but there are just so many mistakes, like little defensive mistakes that you learn at a very young age that the Yankees are making right now. I mean, I can point out 4 or 5 mistakes from last night's game where you're looking like, what is going on? The third inning, there's a rundown. No one covers second base after Volpe's chasing the guy back to first. Even John Sterling was on the broadcast, and he said, "Oh my God, like what is it? You've got Verdugo and Oswaldo not communicating on the pop up down the third base line. That drops. That ends up scoring a few runs because you can't get that out. I mean, and then DJ LeMahieu in the extra inning where they gave up 6 runs. I mean, not lunging and touching first base for the double play, and then Volpe not realizing that Kwan thought LeMahieu did that. He was walking back to the dugout. You had a chance to double up. There was no awareness right there. It's just these little mistakes that are popping up. And to me, that is a sign of poor managing. Okay? Listen, I've been indifferent about Aaron Boone. I've campaigned for him to have been fired, but I've come to the conclusion like, listen, Aaron Boone, I don't like him, but he's not the main problem with the Yankees, right? There's only so much a manager can do when you've got 4 or 5 guys hitting sub 230. There's right. I mean, as much as you want to complain and you can swing the axe and cut him, there's not much you can do. But if we keep seeing these poor mistakes, to me, that's just a lack of managing and fundamentals. I mean, what are we doing? Not dropping easy pop-ups, not covering bases. That's just standard stuff you learn at a young age. And it seems like it's all going. And again, they're still in the divisional race. There's a very good chance they still get a bye for the American League Divisional Series just because the MLB this year is really weird. We're on pace to have no 100-win teams. Like every team has gone through their ups and downs. The Dodgers had their ups and downs. The Phillies looked awful at one point. Guardians have been up and down. The Yankees have had their stretches of looking awful. So in the grand scheme of things, it's not the worst situation, right? You'd still take being the 4th or 5th best team in baseball. But it just sometimes, as Tim said, it's the little mistakes that really drive you crazy. And I'm seeing so many little mistakes right now with the Yankees that in big situational games, if you play like that, you might be able to beat a team that's 6 or 7 games below 500. But if you play the Guardians, a very good team, you keep making mistakes like that, they're going to make you pay. And the Yankees was able to skate through a little bit because they had series against the White Sox, against the A's, where they were making these mistakes. But all in all, they're playing bad teams, so it doesn't come back to haunt them, right? It's not the case. You get into the playoffs, these little mistakes better be fixed or it's going to cost you a playoff series. And it cost you last night against a very good Guardians team who you might end up seeing in the ALCS if you get there.
Well, good stuff. We'll leave it at that. About 5-6 weeks left in the MLB season. Of course, we'll have coverage for the rest of the pennant chase. Next episode, diving into the Eagles, diving in more into college football and the NFL. So you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Next Wednesday, our Sports Speak Fantasy Football Draft. NFL season just 2 weeks away. Thanks to Raheel for joining us. Again, use our promo code SportsSpeak, all caps, one word on SeatGeek, $20 off your first purchase at checkout. But until next time, I'm Eddie Kalegi.
And I'm Tim Moore.
Signing off of episode 184 of Sports Speak Live. We'll talk to you in a few days.